like to call on Tom Hurley to lead us in the pledge.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to the Orange Board of Finance Town Budget Hearing. Oh, now it is, I hope. The 25-26 budget hearing. Let's throw up our agenda tonight. I'll just skip over this quick. We're gonna have the bottom line up front, which with Jim. We'll skip down to item 5 with the Orange Board of Ed. We'll be presenting their budget this evening. Amity will be next with their budget presentation. Then we'll get back to the overall town, the overall budget perspective, what it means to you, which is probably why you're all here, highlights, and then we'll end the meeting with a question and answer session. Okay, our budget overview, our key contributors to this budget are First Selectman Jim Zioli, who's in the back, John Cifarelli, our Director of Finance and Administration, who's at our table, Corinne Lewis, Assistant Director, who's ill and not with us this evening, Art Williams, our Treasurer, the Orange Board of Education and their Finance Committee, the Amity Board of Education, their Finance Committee, all the town department heads, who I'd like to thank for their hard work, and this board, myself, Jim Leahy, Dr. Ajit Jain, who's not here this evening, Dr. Anna Mann, who's next to John and Kevin at the table, Kevin Mactabola, and Joe Nuzzo. We follow the same as we have in the past. We begin working on this budget right after the prior budget passes, hopefully. We establish budget guidelines based on economic conditions, revenue projections, affordability of taxpayers. Again, the Amity and the Orange school budgets are developed by their boards. The town department budgets are developed by our department heads, reviewed and adjusted by the First Selectman and the Finance Director. And then we review all three, meet regularly to finalize the town budget, which is being presented to you this evening. The 25-26 town operating budget's based on a prioritization of needs, affordability. A big part of tonight's presentation is the second year of town revaluation and ongoing inflation and economic realities. This board had a unanimous vote to bring the budget that's being presented tonight to this meeting. Oops. Back to you, Mr. Leahy.
Okay, great. We show this slide. I'm getting feedback, Chris, like the last part of Kevin's recent words are coming out of my computer.
Do you have the video playing on your computer by any chance?
Would you like to take a 30-second break for everybody and come over here and find out?
Sure. You could also hit the mute button. Is there a mute button on your phone?
Come right over. I learned more.
Probably have the video playing.
More from my kids. Technology.
Fixed it?
Thank you.
Still hear it?
Yeah. Every year, we remind everybody what we feel is the responsibilities, and we see two key ones aboard the finance. And it's really, as you all guess, and some have heard before, it's a balancing act. And we have requests for town services, we have infrastructure needs, I see Donnie in the room. All right, public safety, I see the police here, community health and welfare, obviously our schools, and adapting to state budget cuts and assigned costs, and who knows what else. Most of how we balance it is through taxes. We don't get a lot of money outside of what we have for taxes. And in this budget, it's usually around 90%. I think Kevin last year was 90.49, Joe, if that's the right number. All right, this year it's 91.19% of the revenue comes from taxes to cover our expenses. All right, so our first job is to balance that. Second job, this seems to be becoming more and more in vogue. I wrote a pamphlet about this in 1999, but anyway, doing more with less. And you know, I've heard a lot of statements about it, but what it really to me means is you treat public money just like it was your own household. And if you can get a better deal on a flight, if you can get a better deal, you have a very economical vacation coming up, Kevin, that we talked about before we got here. That's all a good thing. That's what we do. All right, so we ask questions in order to understand how the money is spent, because we feel that's our responsibility. That's one of our jobs, okay? And we always like to remember, and the All In podcast started talking about that. That's one of the highest rated podcasts out there. It's kind of interesting. But they were talking about it extensively on that particular date that you see there in April of '23. But it's really true, compounded interest, and I think we all instinctively know it. But it really is the eighth wonder of the world. Warren Buffett says this as well. And what we have here is just a small graph of just looking what would happen if something rose 1% over 10 years, and what would happen if something rose 4% over 10 years. And it doesn't 1, 4, it doesn't feel like much, you know. Well, you can see what the difference is. Now, if it's money you have in a CD, something like that, all good. But if it's budgets and spending, remember, that has to be covered by your taxes. So to me, it's worth remembering all the time. Another thing we're very proud of in this town, all of us, not just the Board of Finance, not just Jim Zioli and the selectmen, because we all contribute to the environment of the community that we're in, right? And we have a AAA credit rating, and I remember going to when they would be rating us, and I would ask them questions. So where I got these 7 factors was by asking questions and writing down what they told me, what would make a higher credit rating. A conservative fiscal policy, solid economic development, a solid fund balance, community involvement. I think all of us instinctively know that, you know, we, in the Board of Finance, we don't, hey, we can go anywhere in town and someone will say, hey, don't I know you from somewhere? And I said, well, I don't think I know you. And you'll eventually land on, they saw you on OGAT, okay? So there's an awful lot of community involvement, not just Board of Finance, so many boards and commissions we have in this town. And I've been in this town 42 years, and I still feel like a rookie, and I feel like that's a great feeling because of the heritage and the roots that I feel in this town of Orange, Connecticut. We do open communication, here we are. Maybe not that many people here tonight, but we know that there's a lot of OGAT watchers, and if they're not watching tonight, they have the opportunity through going onto the website that Chris manages and seeing it at their leisure. We fully fund all of our pension expenditures per actuary. You'll see that in our slides tonight and in the handouts you have in there. And that we collect a high percentage, very high percentage, over 99% of our taxes. So those are the contributing factors for a AAA bond rating. But what's it get you? What it gets you is a decrease in our bond interest rates. Therefore, we pay less for borrowing. And that can be significant over time. Remember, if you pay 2.5% rather than 4%, run that chart I showed you over 10 years, right? And you can see how much difference it can make. All right, we usually start this, and we started last year, giving you the bottom line up front. It's going to be, as Kevin mentioned, an extensive set of slides because, you know, when I used to teach 7th grade math, I always had Sam Howe in the back of the room, and Sam would get it in about 15 seconds. But I want to get everybody in the room, as many, on the same page. So if you don't mind, I'll do it that way. Here's the first thing I can tell you. First of all, we know the budget components, the town, Amity High School, Regional High School, and our K-6 Orange Board of Education. You could see the numbers in the spending there, where it was last time and where we're proposing for this time, $86,083,562. That's 2.71% increase. We're pretty proud of that. And there's some driving factors that we kind of lucked into just a little bit this year, but we're proud to be able to present that to you. Now, in terms of the revenue side, the net grand list, that's the base on which things get taxed. And so if it goes up, it's a good thing. But what we're in the middle of now is the reval process. And the main driver of that 10% is taking a share of that revaluation that last year we showed you. And if you weren't here last year, we have some of the slides coming up to kind of give you a primer on that very quickly. So what happens in terms of taxes? We're going to go through some analysis and then show you what we think it's going to be. First, the grand list. There's three major segments, as I think we all know. The real estate, the motor vehicle, and the business property, personal property. You see where it was the last time we were in here for each of the three. You can see that the real estate has gone up to, what's that, Kevin? $2 billion, $241 million, Joe, 960,116. All right, net grand list for real estate. It's gone up the amount you see in the increase column, and you can see the percentage increase as well. I'll come back to the comment in a second. Secondly, motor vehicle. It really went down. And I don't know, John, if there would be a time that would be appropriate to comment about how we were able to regain that, but the selectmen took action so that we would be able to, so that number in the middle for 24, had they not taken that action, had not John figured it out, that number wouldn't be 195. That was going to be, what, 170, John? Was it something like that? And that would have meant that we wouldn't have as much assets in the motor vehicle, and so therefore everybody else, all the other assets, would have had to pick up the difference. So it was good that it rose up, because that meant that we would be paying, to make it personal, all right, your home taxes. Business personal property, you could see it went up significantly, 24 million, a healthy 9.4% increase. A lot of that, I believe, John, was UI, if I'm not mistaken. All right? So overall, our grand list on which we are going to be basing our taxes in this upcoming fiscal year 25-26 went up 10%. And the grand list increase of 10% was really driven by the reval increases. Go now to the words up in the upper right there with the arrow. 87% of that increase in real estate was due to a shift in reval, not in more real estate coming in, okay? And we'll show you those slides so you can remember what that means. All right, but I'll just give you a hint for those who remember. Remember last year, we decided to do a reval over 4 years, and we do 25% over 4 years. That's where we were last year, and that's where will be a departure point for some of these slides coming up. Okay, I wanted to break it down into 3 sections to make sure that we get the most of the people as we can to kind of understand things. So this is the first section, a little bit of a background. Spending's a major driver of taxes. The more you spend, just in our homes, the more you spend, the more income you need to cover it. Makes sense, right? I mean, even small budget increases, that's the 1% and the 4% for 10 years, right? Build up over a year and can have a significant impact. And taxes, as we mentioned earlier, but just to reinforce, taxes on our assets, residential and commercial, over 91%. That's how we are able to cover it, the spending. Again, reminder from last year, periodically all the towns and municipalities across Connecticut, they conduct a revaluation of all their assets. There you can see the slide from prior. Town assets include the 3 categories. We already covered that. The total of this is called a grand list, and the mill rates role, you're going to hear the mill rate, is to set a number and apply that tax rate on the grand list assets in order to cover that spending. So that's how it all fits together. All right, the second section. We're going to do a little bit of review from last year because I think it's a good departure point to then see what happened where we are for this year. So we'll go through, just like last year, our sample residences. And the first one we'll look at is one I'm very familiar with, 495 Lambert Road. All right, we'll show all of them in just a second. In fact, the next slide. But if you remember, last year when we got the reval, and in my case, I guess it went up $74.7 thousand on an assessment value, and that was a 34.9% increase. Whoa. And because we were so used to, and you can see my prior revaluation was at 210, only went to 214, kind of like, 2%, 34%. But everybody knew it wasn't a big surprise. But the problem we found last year was that in all the assets in our town, the residential went up 38%, and the commercial only went up 17%. So think about that. That meant that the pie, residential and commercial, the residential grew up bigger, and the commercial grew, but when you got a new pie, that meant the residential had to cover more. And we'll show you what happened when that did. Okay, so the homes went up in value, assets, this is a good thing, right? Item 2 there. Many variables will impact taxes paid, but what we were trying to do with this slide for sure is to tell everybody, hey, whoa, your taxes are not going to go up 34.9% just because your value went up. All right, we wanted to get that out there quick. Also last year, a slide, and this is the 6, very familiar to the people at the table in the front of the room, all right? But focusing on one so we can get focus here, and I'll put on my glasses to make sure I can read it. All right, maybe I don't need them. We wanted to ask ourselves, how much of this new value, the full, mine went from 214, you see that column there? Maybe I could try to use this thing, Chris. Right there, do you see that 214 up there? It went to that 288. And to cover this, what we had to cover, to collect the same amount of revenue, that would mean that you'd have to have $488 on 495 Olympic Road. And then when you add in budget increases, because that's just last year's revenue and spending, you'd have to go all the way up to $664. Whoa. So, and you can see the other ones similarly. So what we said to ourselves, and there's a picture on the left on this lien, is, hey, we're breaking it into 2 buckets. One has to do with the reval, that's the 488, and the spending was 176. But the big news was, and we were not happy when we, together in February of that year, we being the Board of Finance, whoa, this would mean almost 10% increase. We got to figure something out here. So we did. Again, this is review. We said to ourselves, look, we could accept the entire reval in one shot, or how about we phase it in over a period of years? Right? In other words, we'd only phase in 25% each year. So we take a look at the numbers and we said, well, the 176 won't change because that's just from budget increase, but we split that 488 into 4 pieces of 122. And lo and behold, what we were able to do for that one property is that would be 4.31%. The same slide we did last year. So what we said, okay, let's visualize this. From last year's budget hearing, you can see the stuff on the left that we just described, and now what I tried to do on the right-hand side was just give you a picture of what it would look like over the next 4 years. We'd have that 122 that we'd have to spread out, the reval, and then we'd have budget increases depending upon how much budgets went up in each of the successive years. All right? So that's why the kicker box at the bottom of the page there is with a 4-year phase-in, taxes will rise yearly by 122 plus whatever the budget increase was. So we felt pretty good about it. So we unanimously, team, voted to pursue this best phase option, and that's from last year, and that's why it has 2024 date on it. But then something happened. Here's what happened. The state demanded, state of Connecticut, demanded that Orange do a 3-year reval, not 4. 3. We couldn't do that. Got an X in it. Must do reval in 3 years, not 4 years. New information. So, what does that mean? And that gets to the third and final section of this section here.
Jim, I'm going to just interject for 1 second on that point. And I don't know if fully John's more aware of it, but what the state did is put us in a group that has to have reval. So we actually, you'll see later tonight, there's $350,000 in capital set aside because we need to do another reval in a year. So we have this year Then we have next year, and then another reval hits. That's why it's only 3 now instead of 4, because they put us in with other towns and are forcing us to do a reval a year faster than we should have.
John, anything from, all right, Jimmy? Okay. All right, so this is what we were faced with. News. So what do you got? Well, if I was doing 7th grade math again, I'd draw this picture. The 4-year phase-in you see on A, that circle on the left. We were planning on doing 25% each year for 4 years. So after, in B, we did our 25%, no, but we had 75% left. We were thinking we would do it in 3 pieces. Well, not so, says the state. We got to do it in 2 pieces. So what this means is that we, this year and next year, have to cover 37.5% of the reval increase. So you're going to hear us talk about 25%, well, that was last year. But now when you add in the 37.5%, that gets you to what you'll hear off a lot in the rest of the presentation, 62.5%. So we have to use 62.5% of all of the assets in the reval process, their values. All right. So that's what the kicker box says, and that's what we're going to be showing you. Whoops, sorry, team. Okay. Similar chart that we showed you last year. Again, we took sample residents of 6 of us. We just happened to have them in the room. And again, we said to ourselves, okay, just track it easy. I think we can do this. There was the value of 495 Lambert Road at the 25% valuation. All right, there it is. And at 65% valuation, all right, it went up to 260. So it went from 232 to 260. And all of the same, it's an Excel spreadsheet. So John created it. Whoops, sorry, team. Whoa. Okay. So again, what do we need if there was no budget increase? What would be the money needed? All right, and what impact that would have for the taxes on those particular properties. So just focus on the yellow. 495 Lambert Road happens to be 216, make it $217, something like that. And then when you put in with the budget request that we're going to be presenting here tonight, all 3 of those components, that's going to go all the way up to 373 for that property. All right? So it would be 157 or something like that, 156. Okay? And the percentage increase is 5.17 for that property. That's what we're presenting to you tonight. Now you can see across what the 6 figured it would be a good idea, so I did an average, and you can see the average. Now that particular property is the least of the 6 in terms of value, but sometimes you could have a lower percentage increase but higher dollar increase. I mean, that's just because of the size of your asset. But on average, it was $478 increase, and it was 5.3% on average across. All right? So that's what you're being presented tonight, and that's some of the reasons why. More analysis. So here you go, a similar chart to last year, only now we have 2 years left to the right side of that line. We saw again, using the one example, how 9.6 increase on the left. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to do fill increase. We did the first year of the 4-year phase-in, and now we're to the right of the checkered line, we're now in the first year of the 3-year phase-in, of which this now coming is the 2nd year. So taxes will rise, all right, for that property, $217 plus the budget increase. And the reason I wanted to get this in, because we could know approximately, there are a couple of math things that'll change it, but approximately that would be what you will have next fiscal year all right, and the increase in the, whatever the budget increase is. So that's what we have for those sample residences. Visually, you can see the same data. You can see, again, the six properties on the bottom there. The average, there's your 478 in the bottom on the right. Now, you can see the blue, again, how much of it is due to the shift from reval from 25 to 62.5. Remember, we weren't planning on covering, we were planning on only going to 50. We had to get to 62.5. And you can see on the right-hand side, the average is 281. And so 60, almost 60%, 59% of the total is because of the reval shift. Okay, reval shift. And you can see, and that's the blue is the reval shift, the orange is due to the budget increase, and the total is the wavy line above it. Okay? So, this is percents rather than dollars. Okay, percentages, same residence, same idea. You can see the total in blue. You can see what percent is due to reval. So if we look at our friend 495 Lambert Road, there's your prior slide, 5.17%. And 3%, right on the nose, comes from doing the reval. 2.17% comes from the budget increase. And you can see the averages on the right are really not that dissimilar on average to that property, but again, it will depend on the property. Now, one of the things I was asking myself, I was curious, really, I have that kind of mind. So I said to myself, well, what would it have been if we didn't have to do this 3-year reval? What if we had stayed with the plan, the 4-year plan? And here's what it turned out to be. Okay, in the yellow, I guess it is. The percentage increase, if you have a 4-year reval, which was our plan, right? Right? Would have been, for that property, 4.18, and the average of the 6 would have been 4.27. Huh.
25% more because of the state.
25% more tax of your increase. You just compare that to the 4.18. You go from there, you go up one full, and, you know, 1 over the 4.1, 17, and 1 over 4 is 25, so it would be a little less than that. So that's what we were dealing with. So that's what we got. So again, in summary for this section, spending drives taxes. We have 3 components of spending. Did a pretty good job this year, 2.71. Most of that 10% reval is that 25, taking in the 25% up to the 62.5%. And so what do we say? It depends. It will depend. It will be variable, but it will, on the sample residences, it was 5.3% increase, $478. So if you have questions, start writing them down, and we'll have our Q&A at the end. But and there's a sign-in sheet right over there, and there's the process for doing it. But that's the section that we wanted to get up front and get right out there for you. Okay? Okay. You ready? Okay.
So get into the factors impacting all of us in this room. Inflation obviously is a concern. Oops, sorry. Thank you. Jim, I need you back.
Okay. Sorry.
So inflation and state cutbacks, and the big one on the state, I'm sure Dr. Scarpetti and Dr. Byers, who's here with us, will bring up, you know, that they've rolled back how much they're reimbursing us on special education. So that's a definite impact. And we get to safety and security. That's our police and fire departments for the most part. And I think anybody who follows either one of those on social media can witness how many accidents and things that are happening on our roads and in our town lately. And I think there's a record number of calls. I have both chiefs here, if they probably true, right? Then we move on to wage growth. One of the things here is, believe it or not, minimum wage has gone up 25.77% from August of '21 until January of '25. So that hits all of our like park and rec programs and a lot of the summer labor and everything else, plus it pushes everybody else up. Then we get to our electricity costs, another concern. John could add anything he wants to about the town, but I know all of us welcomed that new public surcharge on our bills in the past few months, so that's a definite significant increase to all of us. Economic uncertainty, well, just watch the roller coaster we've been on the past month or so, and so that really says it all with what's happening. And then interest rates, we still are in limbo there with who even the Fed chairman's gonna be, and whether rates will stay where they are, go down, go up, depending on inflation. So those are all things we had to consider too.
Okay? You good, Kip?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, we'll go through this in your packet, you're going to see these next two slides. First of all is a pie chart of the expenditures and where they go. You can see, and you'll hear from, Vince will walk us through the Orange K-6 education budget. Jen is here to go through the Amity slides to give us a flavor of that. You can see the rest of the percentages from employee benefits. That's a big chunk. Public safety is a big chunk. Public works, public buildings, we use these very much. Town services and debt service, you can read it, all right? And we'll go through these and show you the numbers in a little more detail, but you have all of the numbers for the town in the handout that we had. So too, on the revenue side, again, the biggest thing is we mentioned a few times property taxes, 91.18, I guess, percent, maybe I typed it wrong. Anyway, and there's various others, but we don't get that much money outside of the taxes we have on our assets in town, all right? Again, we told you earlier it was 2.71%. This is a summary slide, all right, of where it comes from. You can see that the town budget went up 4.71%. We'll be talking about that later in slides when we have more detail, and Kevin will walk us through that. You can see that the debt went down a little bit. That was helpful, 86,000. So in total for the town of Orange, a little under 4%, 3.95. All right, the Orange Public Schools, 3.90. Vince will walk us through slides on that. And two things that Jen will walk us through. First, their budget increase in terms of the budget itself was 2.93. But in this case, this year, the reason we have such a favorable is our percentage of students in the population of Amity just happened to go down. Now, if you looked at K through 12, you can kind of project going forward when you see, for example, if you have a 12th grade from Orange had, I'll just make up some numbers, 205, and the 6th grade from Orange is 220. Now, 6 to 7, a lot of people change schools and all that. But if you took all things being equal, that would kind of tell you that the next year our percentage could go up 1%, in which case we would be a very heavy load. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear for all of us. So 2.71%, and that's what we have. And we'll do a slight change over here because the next item on the agenda, Vince is going to walk us through the Orange BOE budget. Let me get a thing for you, Vince. There you go. Good, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Board of Finance members, if I may, I'd like to acknowledge all our board members. I know many of you are watching at home, but we do have a few here sitting. I don't have my glasses on, but I do think I see Mrs. Apak in the back. We have Mrs. Hadlock, Mr. Zyman. Force of habit, I was going to say Mr. Kraut, but I got to take that back. But I think those are the board members in attendance right now, and some staff. We have Dr. Russo, Mr. Gray, and Mrs. Koch. So thank you for asking us to attend, and kind of extend on what we've already said to you at our Board of Finance presentation. I'd like to point out this is a letter that we shared at the Board of Finance. And if you need any additional information, please, I do encourage people to go on OGAT and look at the presentation that we did with the Board of Finance. But if I could take a quick moment, I'll read from here, but it's this line here that I'm going to be reading to all of you. In a time of rising costs and economic pressures, we have approached this budget with diligence and care, balancing fiscal responsibility with the focus on maintaining and enhancing educational excellence. Every decision made is guided by our responsibility to the community and our unwavering dedication to the success of our students. So that's the balancing act we all have, right? You know, some people come up to me and say, you need to ask for the moon, this is your role as a superintendent. Yes, but we have to balance that out with the needs of our entire community. This mission statement, I give the credit to, I don't know when this was created, way before I became your superintendent. This is what guides us, and I think this sums it all. If we can envision this mission statement, it's a foundation with every decision that we make, especially the budget. It includes, and one of the statements I like besides together we will make a difference, that's not just the Board of Ed, it's all of you in this room. I'm looking at people from the first selectman who is accessible to me at any moment, even on the weekends when we went through some extremely challenging times, to Board of Finance members, to, you know, Donnie, I've sang your praises several times.
Don't go too far there.
Well, I have to say, to get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning and his attitude does not change, it's fantastic. The fire, and again, I'm going to point out the police, again, this is something real special in the town, and people note that and see that all the time. District goals, again, we're going to continue active learning and high expectations. We want to support our students and staff with success through strategic purchase of curriculum materials and technology. Things have changed. Since I've been here, well, now we have one-to-one devices, smart boards. We need to upkeep that. There's a conversation we had at the Board of Finance meeting that Mr. Leahy brought up, and I appreciate that you extended between just the numbers, Mr. Leahy, is there was a story called Told a Story. That tells about what we're doing here. It's not just about purchasing programs. I shared this. I said it emphatically. I'll say it to all of you. Programs don't teach kids. Teachers teach kids. And that's why we're so valued with all the teachers we have, even our teachers that are beyond the certified teachers we have, the aides that we have, the support system we have. This is what we'll see, and again, you'll see that's the predominant with the budget. Highlights of the current year. We're focused on our social studies curriculum, but curriculum is always being updated. I want to thank the PDEC. PDEC is a Professional Development Evaluation Committee for updating our leader and evaluation plan. Mental health, social work. Again, I've teased Mr. Leahy before about doing less with more, and the gentleman with thank you. But here's a piece where, you know, doing less with more. So I just want to take a little point here with the mental health. Prior to a grant, there was conversations about needing extra support with emotional supports in our schools. Then we were fortunate to apply for a grant. It was for a social worker, in which it was a 3-year grant. 2 years are 100%, and the 3rd year is we receive 70% from the state. We're currently at our 2nd year. Again, that's 100%. Next year will be our 3rd year. We'll receive 70% from the state. And then the following year, that will be absorbed by the budget. But this was a need. This was something that our students needed, and sometimes our families need it. So again, we want to thank that and about how we've been fortunate of how many grants we've received over the years. Our goals are continue to meet the needs of all students, continue best practices, and that's about Told the Story. Again, for those of you that don't know that, it's really a podcast about the challenges that I know every district is facing with state demands, but regarding the science of reading, there's a link on our website. If you have the time, I encourage you to watch that. It is eye-opening. It's almost like you could, and this was talked about in another state, but if you listen to it, you'd be like, aren't they you would think they would be talking about Connecticut. Maintain instructional program while responding to changing needs of students. There's something called LRE, least restricted environment. Our goal is to always keep our students here. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we have to outplace students, but it's very minimal that occurs. So we have to be flexible in our approach with all our students and seeing what we need to do to meet their needs in our schools. Provide safe environments, again, to our fire marshals and police, and our staff that goes through, again, crisis drills. We had some drills this morning. That's pertinent for our students and our staff, but it's also pertinent about what we want to do with keeping our schools clean and especially have that healthy environment too. Mr. Houlihan mentioned this. This doesn't happen overnight. This starts in October and continues. I'm sure one of the board of Mr. Houlihan will probably mention the dates that are at the very end. We're here at the April 22nd, but there will be a Board of Selectmen in the annual town meeting and finally the referendum. This is discussed at the Board of Finance meeting, and this is our enrollment numbers. One thing I wanted to point out, which I did at the Board of Finance, if you look at these students' budgeted numbers, this line here, those numbers are the numbers that we present to the Board of Finance in March. If you look at the students' actual, that's what we end with. And besides the COVID year, which was a decrease, we always increase with our numbers. So that says something with regards to our student enrollment. People want to move to Orange because of the education system here. We share the budget history. We're asking for a 3.9% increase that Mr. Leahy just mentioned. This is the visual that I talked about. And again, what I want to springboard off about teachers teach students, not programs. You'll see most of our budget is to salaries and benefits, as it should be. We want to have excellent teachers. We have to pay them a salary that's excellent, as best as we can, that we could afford. And if people are like, oh my gosh, no, that's the way it should be. And you'll see that in every district because that's where we want to put. It's called our human capital. Again, teachers teach students, not programs, and that's where we want to put most of our funds. That pie chart, this is just explaining what that pie chart. So again, as I said, salaries, transportation, we just negotiated with our transportation. That increased a little bit. As we know, all prices are going up, including our contracted services. Health insurance, you'll see in a moment, that will spell out our health insurance, which was the largest driving force of an increase from last year to this year. For those of you that don't know, we are self-insured in this town. And again, we pay by claims, and sometimes that goes up and down. And this past year, it happened to go up, and so we're seeing the effect on that. And just to summarize, again, 3.9% increase. That largest pie chart are the contractual obligations. You'll see the largest is the insurances. A huge impact from last year, from this year. The other benefits, bus contract I mentioned. So anything else other than what those main levers have been is what is really going to our students and staff. I kind of said this before. I think this town is extremely special. I'm honored to be your superintendent. I want to thank everyone in this room, no matter who you are with regards to your individual. Most of the people I've mentioned, especially the people on boards, these are volunteer. They put their time and effort in, their heart into it, because they love this town. I want to thank you for always supporting our students and staff. That ends the presentation.
The next part of our presentation will be the Amity part. I think we're using technology. I guess someone would say I should start to learn to use. But in any event, Jen Byers is back, and I'm all ears to hear about what happened yesterday. But right now, we have to do what we're here for. And so, Jen, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. Good evening to everyone in the audience. Much like Dr. Scarpetti, I want to recognize Ms. Loomis, who is our Director of Business and Administration, and certainly the brains behind much of what we do with our budget. I also see Ms. Lombardi, one of our board members in the audience, and I appreciate all the work that they give into presenting and developing our budget this evening. Much like the Orange Board of Education, we are guided by a mission, goals, and our portrait of the graduate, which is and was developed across all 4 of our school districts, so that it represents not just the hopes and aspirations for our students at Amity, but truly the hopes and aspirations for all of our elementary students as they go through school from kindergarten up into the 12th grade. Again, our budget development process in sort of an abbreviated form doesn't look that different from what Dr. Scarpetti presented. We start in September, predicting what we're going to need for essentially the following September. We go through a lot of workshops at the department level and at the school level in the early fall. We start presenting to our Board of Finance in December and January. You'll remember we have an Amity Finance Committee, and so that is made up of 3 members of the Amity Board of Education, 1 from each town, 3 members of the finance committees. Mr. Nuzzo represents Orange, and so that way we make sure the voices of the town are part of the budget development process just as much as the voices of the Board of Education. Ultimately, we have a public hearing for just the Amity budget in April because we have our own independent and separate referendum. So that has already occurred, but we come back to Orange so that we can also present to you. In terms of an overview, our pie chart doesn't look that different from the one that Dr. Scarpetti presented. Again, most of our finances costs go into salaries and benefits because teachers are what drive a school district. What you'll see is that we do have expenses in purchased services. Something that you won't see the same in, say, the Orange Board of Education. So we have to contract for things like groundskeeping, snow plowing, because those types of things would typically be performed by town employees for the local boards of ed, but regional boards of ed have to actually get our own contracts in order to support that. We also carry debt service. In this case, you'll see that it actually benefits our budget this year. Sometimes it doesn't when we have to borrow money to improve our school buildings and facilities. That's something else that you'll see sort of built into our budget is that we do maintain all of our buildings and facilities, whereas essentially the town kind of owns the buildings where the elementary schools are housed. And then we certainly need to provide programs that sometimes look a little bit different from elementary districts. So if you think of an athletic program, you don't have those to the same level and extent that you do at a high school. Beyond sort of your traditional core subject areas, there's an expectation that we run robust visual and performing arts department, whether it's musicals like The Little Mermaid or a concert choir or an orchestra. Our arts classes aren't just painting and drawing. We're expected to have sculpture and pottery and photography. Our CTE classes include automotive, culinary, architectural and mechanical engineering. So we're running these very robust programs on top of what we would do just say for English, math, social studies, and science. I'd like to sort of focus on what this budget is supporting. So it does continue to maintain our obligations for high-quality academics, athletics, and the arts. It does support students who need interventions and have academic deficiencies. Particularly this year, we're looking to add some additional math support in order to support our kids who are in our Spartan Academy program. And all of it sort of aims towards developing that portrait of the graduate that we have for all of our 3 BOA towns. The budget supports student activities, and we did add some additional funding to support our musical theater or drama productions. We added some funding to support field trips, which can be fairly costly, especially at the middle school level, and we want to make sure that our families are supported to allow their students to attend those activities. We added a middle school late bus. Currently, our middle school runs late buses on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so kids can stay after those days to get extra help if they need it in academic areas or to participate in extracurricular activities. We're proposing to add a bus also on Wednesdays, which is the same schedule we have for the high school, but that will just open up more opportunities for our children to have those extracurriculars or to receive that extra help. And finally, we're looking to support our Amity Advocates program, which is a sort of a specialized niche health and PE class that really goes out and does a lot of community service projects as part of their health and PE, one of their health and PE credits. The budget supports the one-to-one devices, as Dr. Scarpetti mentioned. That's sort of the world that we live in right now, and we do have to put them on replacement cycles. Students essentially will get 2 devices over the course of the 6 years that they spend in Amity. Our teachers also need devices. They have to sort of be one step ahead of the kids, so we need to make sure they feel supported. We need to make sure the infrastructure that runs those devices, like Wi-Fi access points or the servers that store all of that information, is up to date and able to support things. We also need to replace things like smart boards or smart TVs that we have in our classrooms. And we also have specialty labs. So this year we're looking to replace a lab that is located in one of our manufacturing classrooms. It's a lab that really does special CAD design, and a student laptop is never going to be powerful enough to actually sort of run the programs that the kids need to run. This is the lab where our students are doing some of their sculpting, woodworking, our solar-powered car, our laser engraving, and so it's sort of one of our specialty CTE labs that needs those computers to be replaced. Our budget supports pupil services and student mental health. We are seeing an increased number of students who are coming with multi-language learners. Again, this has been sort of easy to predict because we've seen it at the elementary level, and of course it's now moving up to us. We do have what's called a TESOL teacher. TESOL means teacher of English as a second language, but we do have need at this point to have 2. We've increased essentially about 125% the number of students with multi-language learning needs in our schools. And then, much like Dr. Scarpetti was mentioning, we have used our mental health grant through ARPA for a school engagement specialist to reduce the amount of chronic absenteeism. We're seeing benefits from that. It has been a phase-in grant. I think we got ours a year ahead of the Orange Board of Education, so we are at the point where we are almost fully absorbing the cost of that mental health specialist into the operational budget. I don't have a slide on it, but since Mr. Houlihan set me up, I will say that one of our challenges that we do have is in predicting special education. Dr. Scarpetti mentioned a least restrictive environment, and we do aim for that, but there are certainly students who require more support because of their special needs than we can actually provide within our school district. So frequently those students are sent to what we call out-of-district placements. They're specialized schools that can provide that additional support. And at a certain point when those cost basically 4.5 times what it costs to educate a student in our district, we get reimbursed by the state. So that sounds like a pretty good deal, but the problem is that the state has not always fully funded the amount of money that we need to have reimbursed. So we estimate based on what they tell us to predict. And I think this year we had an estimate of about 70% of the funds that we needed would be reimbursed to us. The state set aside an amount of funds that was about 59%, so that kind of was putting us into a bit of a precarious position. If you followed the news, they fortunately did emergency funding for this year that essentially covered the gap that they had created, but that is not in place for next year as far as we know. We're certainly, Dr. Scarpetti and I advocate with our local state reps and senators to make sure that they fully fund special education, but it remains a massive fiscal uncertainty that can have a huge impact on our revenues and what we are able to spend. And that's not an Amity problem, that's a problem certainly for the Orange Board of Education, certainly for Bethany and Woodbridge, and basically for every single school district across the state of Connecticut. Our budget supports, obviously, curriculum and instruction, including updating our curriculum through the writing and revision process and the professional development that goes with that. Teacher evaluation, again, as Dr. Scarpetti mentioned, we do have a new teacher evaluation system, and we have some platforms in this budget to help support that. Some short and long-term facilities improvements, which if you were here last year, you may have remembered we're doing upgrades, major upgrades to our library media centers, as well as some more modest upgrades to our athletic facilities at all 3 of our schools. As Mr. Leahy mentioned, a big reason or a big way that our budget is calculated is driven by the enrollment numbers for our towns. And Orange has certainly been on the receiving end of increased enrollment. It definitely was when I first started as the superintendent 6.5 years ago. This year, it happens to be on, I would call it the giving end, where the enrollment of Orange is actually decreasing. And more importantly, the enrollment in Woodbridge is increasing significantly. So that combination of decrease in one town with increase in another town is really causing a major shift in how the percentages are playing out. And so what that means is in terms of town allocations, yes, our budget request overall is a 2.93% increase. But for the town of Orange, it represents a 0.2% increase, or approximately $54,000. So again, it's a great thing this year. That can easily change, and if you actually look at the enrollment numbers that probably are included in Dr. Scarpetti's budget book, you'll be able to sort of predict when you're going to see a swing where it may shift back and there would be a higher increase for Orange in future years. I'd like to just give some perspective on that 2.93%. So Ms. Loomis, probably also Mr. Gray, are part of an organization called CASBO. It's basically all the business managers for the state of Connecticut, and so they collect this data. The average superintendent's budget for the state of Connecticut is a 5.62% increase, and that's the average. So there are definitely some that are really kind of sort of outliers, I would say. If you look at DIRG B, which would be schools that are similar in terms of size and sort of economic wealth of the towns, the average is a 5.14%. So again, both the Orange budget and the Amity budget are well below that DIRG B average. If you look at regional schools across the state, because again, we're sort of unique with those extra things that regional schools have to assume, the average is 4.19%. And then if you look at the, not the budget that the superintendent proposes, but the one that the Board of Ed actually adopts, so comparing the 2.93, the average in the state is 5.36. I will point out that Amity does have one of the lowest budget increases in the state. Out of the 116 districts that reported their budgets, we are ranked 104th. That puts us in the lowest 10% in terms of increases. A lot of that is being driven because we do have a lot of debt service falling off this year, so I'm not going to say that it's through some sort of miracle savings in healthcare or because we radically cut our teachers. We are maintaining our programs so that we can provide the best academic and athletics and arts instruction to our students, but it does put us in a very favorable position when you look at other districts. In terms of sort of our area, and again, I sort of present this because I think it really speaks highly of not just the Amity budget, but the budgets for the elementary districts and for the towns. If you look at our 2.93%, we're very comparable to the 3 elementary districts. Woodbridge is a little higher, probably because they have these major enrollment increases that they are continuing to see. And then if you look at the town budgets, sort of the town piece of the pie that Mr. Leahy was referring to, you can kind of see that, again, we're all relatively similar. Nobody is sort of an outlier in terms of budget percent increases. We do have 2 upcoming meetings. Monday, May 5th will be our annual district meeting. At that point, we'll open up the referendum, and more importantly, the referendum vote for the Amity budget is on Tuesday, May 6th. It's sort of normal voting hours, 6 to 8 p.m. It'll be here at High Plains Community Center for residents of Orange. And I do thank you very much for your time tonight and for your support for our Amity students.
Thank you.
sending a note to. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we have up is the details, or some more details of the town operations. So if you have your books there, if you want to jot down any thoughts you have, this is a list of the major categories of revenue. I think you can see at the top, there's the property taxes we've talked about at least 3 or 4 times on slides. It drives the major portion, over 90% of our revenue. You can see interest, well, Kevin can walk us through probably as chairman, what we want to focus on here. Kev?
Well, the property tax increase is obviously because of the reval and the tax increase. The other one that really jumps out is license permits and fines. $360,000, which is more than that increase there, is from a change in permit fees with the building department. And it seems like a big jump, but if you go back to 22, 23, that's the level we were at. 24 dropped off, so we're anticipating it to go back to the 22, 23 level. Fund balance last year, because of reval, to try to smooth things out, we used 1.2 million in fund balance. This year, because of other things that are going on in capital, we're using $500,000 to take some of the sting out of the tax increase.
Okay, so that's on the revenue side. This is a very important chart, particularly this year. We have seen this, we called it an industry a funnel chart, right? You have a list of items in your budgets of any organization. You can see our general government, et cetera, in the categories underneath that big cylinder on the left. And you take a peek at it, you analyze it. And with John's leadership, he was looking at a little under 100 specific line items and was really pursuing various ways of, how can we make cuts, basically. And he presented to us, and we, as a board, reduced 55 particular line items. We either reduced them or eliminated them totally. And they came as small as $95, all right? Takes money to buy potatoes, Dad used to say, right? $95 to buy a lot of potatoes. And it could be a large item, over $90,000. But the point is this board, led by John Cifarelli, targeted and built into this budget and reduced it, basically, $1,258,286. Targeted cuts, 55 categories. And Kevin, I don't know where we'd be if we hadn't done that.
If this was to be put back, we'd have a 0.46 mil increase on top of what we already have, which would make the average house increase 6.9%.
Instead of 5.3.
Instead of 5.3.
Ah, okay.
So it's
That's
a
big
real.
chunk. That would have been 16 over, 53, maybe 15 over 50. That's a 30% increase over the 5.3.
What we're doing now, yeah.
Significant. Kev, give a crack at what we see here, 3, 6, 7, maybe walk us through a little bit on the the categories of spending.
Well, public safety, the big change there is, and some of the members are here, our contribution to the Orange Volunteer Fire Department this year is increasing $207,500, and that's the bulk of the $295 in public safety. We get down to employee benefits. That's health insurance, and it's just like Dr. Scarpetti's budget, where almost 60% of his increase is because of the increase in the health insurance premiums, and that's where we land also. And again, sticking with insurance, the town services number of 126, we actually have a $154,000 increase in property insurance in that budget. So without that, it should be flat or
So
should have
we
saved
had
money.
Cuts another part of that.
Yeah,
budget. We could
exactly.
get it to 126, yeah.
But the insurance end and, you know,
So you can
I don't see it flattening out anytime soon, but we'll see.
So the total with a boost from the debt service, which went down 86,000, as you can see there, there's your 3.95% increase that we've kind of given you the overview, and you have far more detail in the handouts that you have, okay? But it says here in the kicker box, if I got it right, Kev, that over 50% of the spending increase is driven by employee benefits. That's 666, 52.6%, right? So it's similar to all our budgets, I guess. I'll handle a little of this and drive us through, and the first thing I want to say is, you know, you look at what we spend our money on, major categories, comes as no surprise, all right? But you can see an 11-year history. John, great job on this, in this chart. I love it. And you can see the biggest increases and the biggest amounts of money, all right, are both on employee benefits and on education, right? And Dr. Scott Petty and Dr. Byers had already gone through their presentations, well communicated and well designed, frankly. But when you see the employee benefits track, again over 11 years, you can see other compensation, health and life insurance, pension contributions, look at that, and statutory taxes and workers' comp. So you can clearly see that the two with the, it almost looks like looking at a city from a distance with the buildings, right? Only one of them looks like more going up a hill. Health insurance, Kevin, you were mentioning that.
Yep. No, that's the big driver of the expense of this budget, and you can see the increase there.
Okay. And John, the pension contributions, is that, do you think it'll continue to rise, or how do you see that?
The defined benefit plan will probably level off. We only have about 4 people that are remaining town employees in that.
Okay.
The 401K will probably continue because as our salaries go up, the contribution to that will increase.
All right, thank you. All right. John, you and Kevin, I'd like you to kind of handle the capital chart. This is a summary chart. I threw that together, but I think they're better to speak through and to it, please.
Yeah, and there is a detailed page of this in your book with the breakdown. The capital we're spending, the Orange Board of Education, we're gonna be paving the playground at Turkey Hill, refinishing the gym floors at all the schools, and updating the library media center at Peck Place. The town, we're paying off the bucket truck that we started last year, so instead of financing it out, we're just gonna pay the rest of it off. Revaluation, which I mentioned earlier, that's $350,000 of the 527, because we have to go through it again, it's state mandated, and then the Roach Field renovations is the remaining part of that section. The police department, we're doing the portable radios and modems for the vehicles. There's a portable radio phase 1 where I guess, I forget, Max, but you're phasing it in, you're doing so much every year going forward, so the phase 1's being covered. And the long overdue HVAC unit in the pistol range is the final thing there. And then I know he's not happy, it's only $750, but Mr. Foyer, town, we're doing $750,000 towards paving roads in the town.
All right, so that's the capital, and is it, I don't think you can
Jim.
read that
Jim.
note on the bottom. I'm sorry, Johnny?
There's one missing up there under the police. We're also gonna fund the microwave repeater system, both phase 1 and 2. That didn't get in there, but it's part of that.
It's part of that
Oh,
193?
Yeah.
It's in the
Okay,
book.
and that's in
And
the
it's
back
in,
of the book.
and
I
it's in the
think.
back of the
I
book.
think it's the second last page in the book, if you have the book there, of the town's budget.
It
I think
is.
that's where it was. Okay, we're kind of in the sum up area. These are our proposed budget's amounts. They haven't changed from the other slide, but I just threw it. I kind of like the colors in this slide, so that's why I continue to use it, Kev. So you can see it, and you can see the percentages as well. And I always like, and I miss Kevin Moffett. I call him the Orange Board of Finance Emeritus. But I like his words. We have to consider all parts in our budget presentation, our schools, our capital needs, and our town departments. And we work hard to try to balance all that. Remember that balancing chart that I showed you earlier. And finally, the spending on taxpayer dollars, we can see that the education total, well, Kev, I quote you on it, I'll let you present the rest of this page.
No, and as Dr. Byers mentioned, what Amity has, which Orange doesn't, is some of the total's really a little bit, not much, but it would be higher than that 61.3 because we do maintain some of the buildings and the parking lots and everything else at the Orange schools where Amity has to pay for it themselves out of their own budget.
Yeah, and then Jen was mentioning that
Yeah.
on her presentation as well. All right, again, we always say, what does this budget mean to you? And we've kind of weaving back a slide from earlier. Even though we have a 2.71% increase, very favorable, most of the increase in the revenue has been because of the reval. We're going from 25%, now you know what it means, 62.5, and the reason why. All right, state mandated, not 4-year reval, 3-year reval. So we had to cut that 75% pie into two pieces, 37.5%. So in the sample residences of your board, it looks like 5.3% increase, $478 average, right? And so that's the sum up of the bottom line. Now I want to mention, we're going to get to the Q&A part, and we just have a soft way to do it is to just walk up, write in your name and your address, and you can come up here. But before we do that, Jen mentioned as well, I just want to throw up, here we are today, you can see that purple ball there on April 22nd, that's us, that's here and now. And the vote's coming up. First, we look at the Amity district hearing, May 5th, I believe it is, right, Jen? And then May 6th, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., no reason you can't get out and vote, all right? The town budget hearing we already have on the town side, and then we have our annual meeting on the 14th, Jim, right? 14th, right? 21st will be the vote of the entire budget, all right? The entire budget. I would want to mention, though, and give a little plug before we go to the Q&A. Anybody else got these at home? It's a little bit of a flyer. Here, I'll show you it. It's the Orange Land Trust. Heck of a brochure. And what it does, it kind of, and you know, this, I'll get this somehow online. But boy, we have a lot of area. How many trails and, you know, just nice places to go to. And they're having, on this screen here, you can sign up and be in the mailing list, just Orange CT Land Trust, you'll find it. And I think it's, we're always looking for volunteers in everything we do in this town, right? And not only that, on the backside here, they're having an event on May 7th, all right? May 7th, so if we sneak back a couple slides, no one's looking. All right, that's the first Wednesday there, Wednesday after the Kentucky Derby. So there it is, all right, first Saturday in May is always the Kentucky Derby, right? So there it is on the 7th, and they're having it at High Plains Community Center, 6 p.m. All right, so if you're interested in getting involved, I think it's a great document. I think they do a great job for the town. And I just wanted to give them a plug, okay? You good with that, Kevin?
It's great.
I don't know if I asked your permission or not. I'd rather ask for forgiveness. Okay, Q&A. You can just walk over here, sign your name, address. Please go right ahead. We do them in order. I'll be a little bit of a traffic cop if necessary, but I don't think we need much of that. And just come right in and speak your question to the board. Thank you.
You guys always do a great job, but I need to bring something to your attention and the town's attention, and it's the capital budget. The charts are showing like 0%, and you're showing about $1 million something on the chart you just showed me. Back in, must have been 1985, there was a gentleman in this town by the name of Al Pohl. And one of the things he brought up was when you're not doing the maintenance and you're not keeping up the capital projects that need to be done, it's going to cost you more. Okay? Now, move up 20 years, and he was right. We ended up having to gut 2 middle schools, and a big chunk of the high school had to have fixes done to it. Well, Amity learned. They have 5-year capital plans. Everything's on it. They have school book plans to make sure the school books are adjusted, and yeah, they can move it a year here or there. So they put categories so that those categories did not get ignored when we're trying for this master goal of trying to come in with the lowest number possible. And I just want to bring your attention again, and it's been brought to your attention now for 3 years running since I've been in the office, of the condition of the offices in Town Hall. I've got peeling paint. I've got floors that go back to '65 when they were put in. Who knows what's on them? And I don't know about getting the proper person's attention that gets put on a list so that it will be done at some point in time and not continue to be pushed off. I mean, we all don't want to pay more taxes, don't get me wrong. But ignoring maintenance and things of that nature, and if you've been in Town Hall, the restrooms are in trouble, okay? There's my room, the assessor's office needs attention on the first floor. And I just want you to consider that those things need to be put into your plans. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Others? Good.
Hi, I'm Saul Silverstein. I'm also the chairman of the Orange Government Access Television Committee. And in reviewing the proposed budget, I think, looking at it, I see that it eliminates funding for the OGAT Assistant Coordinator position. The OGAT committee believes that this puts the station at risk. To give you some background, during the current fiscal year, the coordinator position became vacant, and the assistant coordinator was promoted into the coordinator position. At the time that happened, I spoke to First Selectman Zioli, and he said he didn't want to fill the assistant position right away. So the OGAT committee thought about that, and we decided we did intend to fill that position in the near future. And our input to the budget requested full funding, which I believe was $25,250 for the year. And even the First Selectman's input to the budget showed the full funding of $25,250. Instead, the current budget, proposed budget, shows it as zero. So as a result, that position is going to go unfunded until July, at least July of 2026. We believe that's going to put the station at risk to go dark if anything should happen to the coordinator. There is no one else who can fill his shoes right now and knows all the equipment, and a lot of it is new equipment and highly technical stuff. There's no one available who can fill that immediately. So if that happens, there's a chance the station goes down. Although we do have 2 camera operators, they're part-time people. They're not trained in using that studio equipment. They're still somewhat in the training process for being camera operators. In the past, also, the coordinator position was 25 hours a week. The coordinator today is also an IT employee of the town and splits his time evenly. So his work for OGAT is now less than 25 hours a week. It's more like less than 19 hours a week. So there's a cut there. We have had situations recently where the committee has asked the coordinator to do some tasks for us, and he's not been able to get to them, just because of time constraints between his two jobs. In addition, for the last 6, 7 months, we've been trying to increase the number of programs we record and show. The lack of an assistant puts this plan in jeopardy. Restoring funding to the assistant coordinator position would rebalance the work levels for the coordinator and continue to create efficient operation for the station. Historically, OGAT has asked for minimal or even zero budget increases year on year. In fact, this year, it's down. Not only because we don't have an assistant coordinator, but also because the coordinator's salary is lower than it had been in the past. We've also, since 2009, we have secured grant funding from the Cable Advisory Council. Over those years, we have brought in over $340,000 to help fund us. That has saved the town that money. A lot of that money has gone to equipment, and a lot of the equipment wears out. In fact, assistant coordinator told me last week that some of our equipment is due for replacement soon. That funding, by the way, we were instrumental, I would say, or participated heavily in securing that funding by testimony that we gave at the state legislature to get that done. So, to sum it up, the OGAT committee respectfully requests that we restore that funding for the assistant coordinator position. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep, one more.
next. Good. By the way, anybody can come up and sign in and, kind of be in the on-deck circle. Great.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Muddett, 904 Trillium Court. Also on the OGAT committee with Saul. I think he did a great job of presenting the facts. Just want to reiterate them and lend my support to them. I've been working on OGAT since I was 15 years old, to help start the station with Saul and several of our other committee members that are still on the committee. We've worked hard, and I think, even our presenter today commented on how great of an asset OGAT is to the town, right? Really gives everybody the ability to see what's going on live in town. No edits, no commentary, just live visuals of the meeting. I think it's an important asset to the town, and I think the assistant coordinator is very important to that role. I want to see that position balanced. I don't want to see us overexerting on any one employee and causing them to feel the added stress or anything like that. We do a lot of things to try to make sure we are understanding how much time is being taken for each task. We do go through monthly reports to make sure we understand how many meetings are being taped, how long the meetings are going, everything like that. So we do a lot of watch, as Saul mentioned, that we try to keep our costs in check and do a lot to get this grant funding. So appreciate your reconsideration in that cut. Thank you very much. Also, just general. Also support the Orange Board of Education budget and the Amity budgets. They're great presented tonight, and I think they present a lot of great value to the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mitch Goldblatt, 291 Drummond Road. Reiterating the last two speakers, as the former chair of the Orange Government Access Television Committee, long time ago, when Michael was 15, I wanted to say that it's come a long way. It is a shining example of what Orange can do when it does things right. Ron Davis took us light years ahead of other towns. Most of you know, I work in another community, town of Guilford, who has a lot of things to be proud of. Their government television is not one of them. They're still using VCR tapes, and it's kind of embarrassing to watch sometimes. Nonetheless, I think that even if you, and I hope you do, restore the assistant coordinator position, the OGAT budget's still going to be down by about $7,000 from this past year. So I really hope you do reconsider that. My second item is not one for this budget, but hopefully to think ahead for the next one. I've said this before, but I want to just put it into your minds. John Cifarelli does a great job, and so does his entire staff and the board and the finance department. But I think they get overrun by a lot of HR issues. And this town has grown to the point where it absolutely needs an HR director. Whether it is a part-time position or a full-time position, there needs to be a position to look at that. With the changing landscape of human resources laws and regulations that are changing almost on a daily basis, but have been for several years, there's a lot to keep up with, and I think it's too much for the finance department to keep up with. John is too proud to beg for it, but I think I'm going to try to beg for him. So I hope that next year's budget, you really start to consider that as a position that should be, for a town this size, for a budget this size, for a number of employees that we have, is something that's absolutely necessary. Also to keep us out of trouble, because one lawsuit going the wrong way can hurt much more than the cost of, like I say, even a part-time person in that kind of position. And the last thing is, I think that everybody's done a great job tonight, and not just tonight, but over the last several months. The Orange Board of Finance, the Boards of Education, both Amity and the Orange Boards, and I would support all three budgets together towards the coming referenda. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Williams from 515 Dogwood Road. I actually have just a question, which might be because I was a few minutes late at the beginning. And the question was, why did the state say that we have to do this in 3 years instead of 4? And why is the town being asked to do another reevaluation earlier than planned? So that was my question. Then my other comment I wanted to make was with regard to the capital improvements. I vividly remember the difficulties that we had with capital improvements in Orange, and particularly at the high school, and am so pleased that the high school, the regional district has done such a terrific job of maintaining capital improvements. If anybody has been in the town hall physically in the last few years, when you walk in the door, you can smell the odor of mold. And the town really needs to address it. Not just for those of us coming to the town, but for all the townspeople who are people who are employed and working there. It cannot be good for their health. Thank you.
Okay, Jim or John or Kevin or anyone, let's address the how come the 3 year. I'll do that when we get to it, if there's any more questions. Okay. Jim likes to bat last. Other people want a Q&A? Anybody else with any questions? I'll try to tie together some of the things that were brought up. You want me to sign in for you, right?
They'll figure out who I am. Okay, good evening, everyone, and truly thank you to the Board of Finance and the Finance Office. You guys have done a yeoman's job as usual. The board, both Boards of Education and your staff, since you have those monthly meetings and you never quite know what you're going to face. It's kind of like tonight, but a little always more boisterous than not. But I heard quite a few different things here tonight, so I write my notes down so I can try to hit on them. The Amity reduction, I call it a gift for this year with the $54,000 budget increase as opposed to some of the others. Don't be fooled, because I remember quite a few years ago now, between population increase and the budgetary increase, we had like $1.8 million years. We've had some $1.5 million, $1.6 million years when it was our turn with Amity. I remember going to an Amity board meeting, and Woodbridge was on the other end. Matt Giglietti was their finance chair at the time, and they were looking at $150,000, $250,000. So I went to the Amity board meeting, and nobody would ever believe I would do it, but those are the people who don't know me. And I begged for them to put candles, wine, and Barry White music in every mailbox in Woodbridge. And it worked, because I told Mika Cardoza, I said, I worked on that years ago, it worked. I said, now you're paying the $1.5 million increase instead of us. But it comes around, it ebbs and flows, but for now, we got the gift for this year and maybe for a couple of years, but that's all, and then it'll shift again. The OGAT commentaries. One of your board members was in my office the other morning for what started out as a 15-minute conversation and went for 3/4 of an hour. And I fully explained to him what the situation was. And somebody will grow from within that group to take over that position. That's how we work it. Generally, it will be somebody from within when at all possible. And there are some people that Chris is working with, and I think there's one in particular that I believe in will be able to work into that position. And that's exactly what No, because it's not going to happen yet. Don't worry about it. You're portraying it that you won't have it for 2 years. You'll have it, and if it comes, we can take care of it. We have ways to do that. So I expressed that opinion to one of your board members a week ago. I thought he was going to do that. As far as Chris working more IT and less for that, that's not always true, because we don't actually track Chris's hours. Chris is an invaluable employee who started out as a part-time employee in the position that they're talking about that was cut. He then moved into, when Ron got ill, he was doing the director position for assistant director pay for quite a long time and did a great job. I like Chris very much, and he knows that. Then the time came that we had to do something. Chris moved into that position. He has some outstanding young people working with him right now, and I believe that there is somebody in that group that I've already identified that I think will be able to grow into that position. When that happens, that person will be offered the job, and the job will be funded appropriately, just so everybody knows. OGAT's not going anywhere. Many people have asked about the reval thing. We got sucked into a deal. Luke Bronin needed to postpone reval in Hartford. So the legislature came up with a way so that they could postpone the reval in Hartford. But they didn't want to make it look like it was just for Hartford. So they went around and they were looking for 6 other communities that were in the midst of reval if they were willing to join on and delay it. We did. We were one of the towns that was asked. There was some down in Fairfield County, some over in eastern Connecticut, but we were one of the ones that joined on with that for the delay. Well, then they put it out for the second year, so we postponed twice the implementation of a reval. But then there's been another shift. Now, the state of Connecticut, for all these years, hundreds of years, has had 8 counties in the state of Connecticut. They're now functioning out of 9 COGs, which is a Council of Governments. It's a regional thing. The one that Orange belongs to goes all the way from Milford here, Orange, all the way up to Meriden. I mean, Kevin's employer, they're in the same COG as us. We're a 15, 16 town. Between Mitch and I, we should be able to remember, but we're both getting old. Yeah. So they picked out of all these. Well, now they're functioning that way. So Martin Heft, who, if you deal with the state, he's the assistant director at the Office of Policy and Management, OPM. And we had multiple discussions and verbal skirmishes with him, and he was insistent that the first one was allowed, the second one they weren't taking in, so that's why we ended up with a 4-year gap and have to implement this over 3 years, because in the 4th year, we have to do a reval. Years ago, revaluation was 10 years. Then they shifted it to 5 years. It's supposed to be going back to 5, but we have to go, us and a few other communities in our COG, for our region, a couple of them, are on this same boat. And that's exactly why that happened. It was done, and if you look at the paperwork, you say, no, you're wrong, but Martin Heff says, no, he's right. And ultimately, that's exactly why, Catherine, that we ended up with that. And that's how it evolved, and that's where we are. Not fun, but that's exactly what happened with that. Something else that both boards of education touched on, the town a little bit, Jim touched on it a little bit, but if you watch what goes on in Hartford as they're doing the funding, whether it be for either of the education systems or for any of the towns, whether it's a LoCIP grant, steep funding, Town Aid Road, some of these things, car taxes. The state has gotten involved in a lot of those things and is reducing those aid numbers to the communities. Well, to me, it's a plus and a minus, because towns should be able to stand on their own and fund themselves properly. But towns have gotten so used to getting these grant funds for so many years that now, as some of them are being trimmed and reduced, we cry foul. But what it's really doing is making the town manage their own self. When you hear the legislators talking about eliminating the car tax altogether, or setting a level where you're going to pay it, all the money goes to the state, and then the state's going to divvy the money back to the communities. Never going to happen. That'll last a year or two. If they eliminate the car tax for the town of Orange, it's $5 to $6 million in revenue that the town of Orange would lose. Where's that going to come from? Your house, commercial properties. You know, they're not going to keep funding that. So that's been the way. Yet they put out more grants and stuff, but a lot of those grants are selective. And sometimes you get some of them, sometimes you don't. The fire department's gotten a couple, the police department's gotten a couple, the town has gotten a couple, but it doesn't make up for what used to be standardized funding of the of each community. They would get things. As far as the building maintenance, when you walk in that back door, the problem with that, when you walk in that back door, and the basement is going to be redone, that's on Mr. Britton's thing, all that carpet is all being ripped up and all, and it probably will be replaced with a floor similar. This room was just done this year, and it probably will be done very similar to this room. But when you walk in that back door, the reason you get that musty smell is that's a cement slab, and there's no drainage around there, and it's dampness. It comes from the elevator shaft and that cement slab on grade, and that's what there is. We can put odor eaters up there or stick-ups on the walls or something, but that's what it's from. It's from dampness that is cement slab on grade right there. Is what it comes down to. As far as the basement, that is on the radar. Mr. Britton is already working on going out for that. I don't know, Mr. Hurley brought up the bathrooms. I don't know, they seem to work as a bathroom should work, but I don't know, maybe we need gold faucets or something, I don't know, but that, he really should have been talking to Mr. Britton or Mr. Stewart about that. That's not the Board of Finance's purview. But other than that, those are the things I have at the moment. Many people have been asking, so I will go to it. Christmas tree shops, plaza. Many people have asked about Stu Leonard's there. That if Stu Leonard's would go there, they could go there without anything other than filling out the building permits and stuff as needed for refit. The property owners of that site have had multiple people, some of which we've brought to them, some which they have been contacted, and New England Brewing wanted to go there. All the time while New England Brewing was being discussed in West Haven, and West Haven was voting to give them all kinds of givebacks and everything, they were in mapping and measuring and everything, that building there, and they wanted to do their production, manufacture, all their production, shipping out, and have a restaurant pub area, all is in that 60,000 square feet where Christmas Tree was, and the landlord wouldn't work with them. Stu Leonard wanted to go in there. He was chasing them hard. He's contacted us, we've contacted, I met with the people, Anne Marie Slyby, who's our economic development director, and myself, and a man named Tuck Davis, who's one of their management people, and Mark Furman, I think his name is, out of New York for Brixmor. They outright said to me, well, we're not sure if he's the type of client for our plaza. That's what they said. And I found it quite interesting. And, but that was Brixmor's thing. Now they have a basically empty plaza there, and they've sent, I mean, even on the border has closed now. And so they've asked for a meeting, and I sent them a rather kind of sharp email at one point. And so now they've asked for a meeting with Anne Marie and purposely excluded me from it. I mean, they forget she works for me, so I'm going to know what's going on, whether at 10 o'clock or 10:30. So we'll see what happens, but I think they got something up their sleeve that they think they're going to get, but they're not going to get. But it's really sad because a great new facility, Bulldog Swimming, opened up in there to teach especially little ones how to swim and all. It's an indoor place. They spent a fortune to put an indoor pool in and all. And you go by there on Saturday and Sunday, all the cars are parked in front of that one venue. Nobody else is doing any business over there. Even the golf guys, in the winter they did a little bit, but not much. Yankee Candle, that Renee's with the ladies' consignment store. The landlords have almost purposely destroyed their tenancy on that property, and I think they've done it on purpose, which is probably why they don't want me to meet with them. But other than that, we're doing well. Last interesting point. There were a lot of people came out screaming and yelling about the cannabis store that went to where TD Bank was. We get revenue from that store. We get 3%, I think, of their gross sale. And when they started out, they were $17,000 to $19,000 a month we were getting. It walked up, it was a little over $20,000 a month, I think we were getting. And now John has noticed our revenue from that store is on a decline. I think we're 17 and going down to 14,000 a month. So it's kind of interesting that I don't know where the users of that material are getting it, but our share, and it's regulated, so I mean, it's not like they're, stealing from us, but that the revenue is declining from that facility also, which is interesting. But they tell me that there's more places that you can buy it than, than when I was 18 years old, I guess. I don't know, but that's what they say, So that's all I got. Any questions for me? If not, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Okay, so I'll just flip it back to the reminder of the dates and the voting dates, and I'll give it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all for coming, and hearing's over.
Thank you all for being here.